It's like super, super quiet. There.
Now it's working, right?
Yes.
Now it picks up everything. Let's see here. Good. Just waiting for more people to come on now that I had to change it. I'm going to put this on the Facebook page right away so that people can find it. Just give me a minute.
There's only 2 watching me and Gary.
I know, because everybody's having trouble finding it now.
Can we share it from here? I don't know how to do that. I think you can.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, underneath. Share.
I'm going to put the link on the Facebook page so that people can find it. If I remember how to do it from the PC. There we go. Okay, I put it on the Facebook page. Hopefully people will find it. Oh, we have 5 people now.
Oh, mine only says 2.
Good to go. Eric made his way back on.
Oh yeah, you have 6 now.
Yes. Okay, we'll give it a couple minutes. They're starting to find us now. Oh, hi, Eric from Canada. How do you get TTA Performance T-shirts? Ask. This is actually the first T-shirt that I made before I made the logo. So I decided to go a little retro today. I'm gonna try to get more of it in there. So yeah, they're finding us now. You're asking. Yeah, I have actually TTA Performance T-shirts available. You can also get a hat or a sweatshirt, but I think they're $25 each. And because you're in Canada, we'll have to get shipping on there too. But we'll see. I am probably getting text messages too now. Okay. Oh, we lost some people now. But I don't know, it went down to 6. So we'll get started. So big announcement, as you can see behind me, this is a different surrounding. We actually moved at the beginning of June. We are now in a bigger house, more out in the county. We're still in Kenosha. We're in the village of Summers now. And it's just, it's a really nice house and a little bit bigger garage. Everybody always asks, how big is the garage? The garage is taller. We're going to be getting a lift inside the garage. It's just going to make things a little bit easier to work on the cars. It also has a loft so that we can have more storage of parts and inventory and things like that. And we'll probably, maybe one of these other lives, we'll do one from the garage as soon as we get the internet all hooked up out there. So that's a big announcement there. It's been a major undertaking, trying to move all the inventory and equipment, and the wife's laughing at me because she totally knows what it's like. But yeah, we're still trying to settle in and everything, get the garage set up. Like I said, the lift just came yesterday, got that unloaded, but it's going to be a while yet before we get it installed in the house or in the garage. We got some other changes that we need to make to it also, but it's getting there, and it's gonna be quite the setup. It's gonna be pretty nice. We moved to a bigger house with hunting dogs. Don Rickles says that. That's great. So that's the big announcement that we have. I'm pretty sure I changed the address on the website. Yes, I'm getting a thumbs up. Yes, we did. So that's the big exciting news. So TTA Performance World Headquarters has moved to the town of Summers, Wisconsin, or Village of Summers, still in Kenosha. What else are we going to talk about today? Well, one of the big things we were going to talk about is drag racing. I managed to take my car out to the drag strip a couple times since the last live video that we've done. Did a new personal best with it, 14.21 at 100 miles per hour, which I didn't believe until I saw the time slip. Yeah, it was doing very well. It definitely needs a torque converter. It needs a higher stall torque converter. It could definitely benefit from that because it is a challenge getting off the starting line with a stock torque converter and trying to get any kind of RPM out of it right away. 60-foot times still suffer, but I've kind of known that for a little while. But other than that, it's running great. We took it out again this past Tuesday for a friend invited me to his company outing that they were having at the drag strip. We had a little quick bracket race set up for it, and we all kind of raced each other. I actually ended up winning that part of it, but the car ran great. I was damn near hot lapping the thing at the drag strip, and it took it with no problem. Was tearing off mid 14s pretty much the whole night with no issues. We did go 14.38 at one point, so got close to the 14.21, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge with the stock torque converter, I will say that. Other than that, what else were we going to talk about today? And of course, we'll be answering your questions too, so have your questions ready. So one of the other things that we did recently too is one of the customers came with his 81 Daytona 500 car. That it was one of the first engines that I had rebuilt. Big performance build, 30 over forged pistons, had the headers. We did a Phytech fuel injection on it. It has a stage 3 turbo on it because at the time the stage 5 wasn't available yet. And he was still doing all the body work and everything on the car once the engine was done. One of the YouTube videos actually shows it running on the stand, one of the first YouTube videos that I did. So now the car is together, running and driving. He drove it up here to have me check over the fuel injection, and everything was working great. The car runs phenomenal. And we decided to take it to the dyno. So that's where things got pretty exciting because Don's Auto Parts and Machine Shop here in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Tony Pontillo is the owner. He helps me out a lot. We do a lot with the dyno, and he does all my machine work also. Great guy, great team over there. They got new software and everything for their chassis dyno. So this is quite state of the art. It's pretty neat. One of the features that was really cool was that it now has this feature where if we drive the vehicle like 70, 80 miles an hour on the rollers and then let off the throttle and just let it coast in neutral all the way down to like 2 or 5 miles per hour, it takes a while to get down, it will calculate drivetrain loss to where when we make a hit on the dyno and we measure rear wheel horsepower and torque, it will actually automatically calculate what the flywheel horsepower is. So that's pretty neat. We got to try that out for the first time. This is taking the customer's Daytona 500 car on there. Got to see all these new features and try out all this stuff. And the car ran great. We arrived with about 8 pounds of boost in it. and I figured it'd probably do like 200, 210 horsepower to the rear wheels. Well, it actually went 230 horsepower to the rear wheels with 8 pounds of boost. It does have water injection on it and everything, so I said we need to turn it up. So we turned it up. Got to about 12, maybe touched a little over 12 at times. 12 pounds of boost. It went 241 horsepower to the rear wheel, 240 horse to the rear wheels. It made, what did it make for torque? It was well over 300, 340 at the wheels of torque, I believe. It actually, according to then the dyno with the calculation to the flywheel, it was saying it was making about 280 horse, 285 horse to the flywheel, and torque was up there, of course, 380, I believe, somewhere around there. But car ran great. He didn't want to turn it up any more than that, which is fine. I left it wherever the customer wanted to be with it, and then drove it back home, and then he drove it back to Illinois. Great running car. It really ran well. The fuel injection was running great on it. We had timing control going on with it, and I didn't even touch it. It ran so well, and everything was doing what it was supposed to. I didn't touch anything with the fuel injection or the timing. So that worked out really well. But that's kind of neat because the next YouTube videos of me taking the car to the dyno or trying things, or even another customer's car, we'll be able to get that torque reading that we couldn't get before. So with the new software and everything, that's a definite plus. So waiting to get my car back over there and do and actually play with some of the features of that dyno and see what other stuff we can do. I know they have like a constant state thing that you can do where it'll load the roller to where the car won't go over a certain mile per hour, no matter how hard you're accelerating on the gas pedal. So you can do like wide open throttle, but have it locked at 60 miles an hour. Different things like that. So I'm curious to play with it and see what other things we can do. A little more about my car. I actually had a header gasket go bad. That was my own fault. But what a difference it makes when you're leaking exhaust before the turbo. Things were getting kind of loud under the hood, and things were getting kind of lazy as far as coming on to boost. But after changing that header gasket and getting everything dialed back in, it really came alive and woke up. And that's good. I'm really happy with the way the car's running right now. Some other things. So, talking about the dyno, there's another dyno place about a half an hour from me that I took another customer's car that's actually going to California, and he's got to pass California smog with it. So TTA Performance out in Silver Lake, Wisconsin. You may have heard of TTA. They've done a lot with Hot Rod Magazine in the past. Look for it, if you not the TTA that's in California that Steve Brule on Engine Masters and stuff. It's not that TTA. It's the one here in Wisconsin. Norm Brandis, great guy, very knowledgeable, very smart man. I took a customer's 80 pace car over there because he has a 5-gas exhaust analyzer that he can kind of measure emissions with. And we had the specs that California emissions was going to be looking for smog testing. So I took it over there to see if it would pass. The car's got a brand new catalytic converter on it. It has a standard upgraded turbo. Other than that, I know nothing else about the engine other than I was told it was rebuilt. The car is a restoration car. Car runs good. Brought it over there. First time that I went there, it actually had a problem. It was too lean at idle, and I couldn't richen it up anymore from the idle mixture screws. I actually ended up drilling out passages for the fuel mixture screws to get more fuel into it. And it was too rich at wide open throttle, or actually just cruising, it was too rich. So I ended up jetting it down for the emissions side of it. And we're only running stock boost pressure. It's only running about 7 or 8 pounds right now, 7, I believe. And it made, what was the dyno reading? I think it went 176 horsepower, something like that, to the rear wheels. But what I learned from that, and talking with Norm, we were noticing like this engine, the gas analyzer that he has, it'll measure carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, HCs or hydrocarbons, which is kind of like raw fuel vapors. It'll also measure nitrogen oxide, or NOx, they call it. Just looking at those, Norm was looking at it, he goes, you're too rich on the top end when you're under full boost. He says, because your HCs are like nothing and there's not a whole lot of oxygen or anything coming out of the exhaust. He's like, you should lean it out. I'm like, lean it out? If I've got extra fuel, let's put more boost in it. But what was interesting is just things that he talked to me about and how you can actually gauge performance or figure out how to make more power just through exhaust gases. That, rather than most people don't have that option, they're just looking at air fuel ratio, they're just looking at, reading spark plugs and things like that. He was telling me that NOx was a good indicator if you were getting close to detonation, and the NOx levels on this car were very low. And he's like, yeah, he says you could up the boost more. He says, and you'd probably be okay because the NOx isn't high at all. He says you're nowhere near detonation. He's like, you're leaving power on the table probably. He says either lean it out, it'll make more power, or add more boost, you'd make more power. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I think I may end up going back there with my car and stuff and just play around and see. I mean, turbo guys, forced induction guys, they're all about, make sure it's rich, make sure it's, having a very rich condition under boost is going to cool the combustion chamber and make sure that you don't get into detonation. Well, part of that is true. Thing is that you might be leaving power on the table because you're too rich. And it'd be interesting to find that out. I'd like to take my car there, have the Holly Sniper. I can make changes on the fly and pretty quickly and see what kind of power am I leaving on the table. Am I putting too much fuel to it? Am I killing too much ignition timing? So that look for something like that in the future. We'll definitely, report back what I find. But that was pretty neat. I always like learning new things, and like I said, Norm's got a bunch of information and a bunch of knowledge, and I look forward to talking to him more about it. Hey, Bruce. Bruce Johnson says hello. So hopefully people are finding the new link okay. I did post it on Facebook. Oh, what else? Anybody got any questions? Wow, I kind of burned through that pretty fast. I guess some things that we were working on today. So I have a customer that has traveled all the way from North Carolina and with his car, a really nice dark blue 80 turbo Trans Am. He was having some trouble with it. He had a mechanic look at it and do some work on it, and things were getting worse. It was running worse. So he trailered it all the way here to Wisconsin to have me look at it. Very rich right off the trailer. It did not run very well. You could hear some popping out of the exhaust because there was unburned fuel that was igniting in the exhaust. So it was making some interesting noises. One of the things that I did to see if it was too rich or too lean, usually if I think it's too lean, you can close the choke and the engine would rev up because you richened it up. This one here, obviously it did not like that. So I pulled the vacuum hose off to see if it was too rich, because if you introduce more air into it, it should smooth out the idle or change the engine RPM or something like that. I actually removed that large 3/8 hose from the power brake booster, and it didn't stall the engine. It actually revved up. And I knew that we had a lot of fuel going on then. Ended up taking the carburetor apart and finding a bent metering rod on the primary side. It wasn't even in the jet, so that was a wide open jet that was feeding way too much fuel. So we corrected that. Got that all back together. Also checked the ignition timing, which was good. The car sounded a lot better. It started a lot easier. The choke wasn't functioning anymore. They had turned the choke housing to leave the choke open all the time. So we got the choke functioning again. Took the car for a ride. Noticed that boost was kind of low, 5 pounds or so. Started messing with the manual boost controller and the wastegate, trying to get the boost up higher, and the maximum I could squeak out of it was 10. I had the wastegate actually disconnected. The vacuum hose was taken off and plugged to where the wastegate had no boost reference signal to it, and I still only got 10 pounds of boost. Then I started thinking exhaust leak, which it did have some exhaust leaks. The donut on the driver's side was leaking. Fixed that. Had some leakage from, a lot of people don't know this, your air pump, your pipe on the front of the engine that's going between the cylinder heads, that's a potential exhaust leak because the air pump is pumping air through the casting of the cylinder heads into the exhaust system. Well, if there's any leaks on the front of the cylinder head from the pipe, that's an exhaust leak. So that's before the turbo. It could slow the turbo down. I did check the turbo. Turbo was in great shape. And so we fixed the leaks at the front of the head for the air pump pipe on both sides, and no more ticking noise from the external leak that it had. So it sounded a lot quieter, and took it for a ride again. Still only 10 pounds of boost. I said, like, something's not right here. It builds boost easily on the primary, on the two barrel, and it comes into boost very early, very quickly. But that was it. I couldn't, you floor to throttle, and it just barely would crawl up to 10. So I didn't think I had any more boost leaks going on. And I says, well, let's just try going with, excuse me 1 second. Yes, that's your phone. I said, we got to try to look at the throttle. Maybe it's not getting wide open throttle. I know the choke's wide open. I know that the choke lockout lever is not in the way of the secondaries. So I got it back to the garage, and he sat in the car, went wide open throttle with it, and the secondaries barely cracked open. And I was like, something is wrong. Took the carburetor off again, and it had the base gasket, not the base gasket under the carburetor, the gasket for between the main body and the throttle plate was actually broken. It had come into the throttle blade area and limited the throttle blades from opening. So replaced the base gasket and put it all back together. And now that everything was turned up really high, it overboosted. It was overboosting to like 15, 16 pounds, but it started to rain. So we're going to have to turn that down. But it's a good problem to have, that you have to turn down the boost. But that's the first time I've ever seen that happen with a carburetor before. So do we have any questions coming in? Let me take a look here. Do you sell an R134 conversion kit for AC, from Paul Johnson? Paul John. By the way, Paul Johnson is the person that has Rocky, the awesome YouTube channel hero for TTA Performance. I think I've gotten more orders for parts off of those videos. I don't sell a 134 conversion for it. I've never really messed with air conditioning too much. I mean, I can install the hard components like a compressor and hoses and stuff, but I've never done any refrigerant recharging or anything like that. There seems to be some pretty simple kits that you can buy at your local auto parts stores, which basically just change out the fittings. I know 134 uses a quick disconnect style fitting versus the old R12 systems, which the 80 and 81 cars originally came with R12 refrigerant. They had more of a thread-on fitting, but there are adapter kits and things. And from what I kind of understand from selling parts at the parts stores back in the day, was that you didn't really have to do much than change the fittings, make sure the system had a vacuum pulled on it to get all the moisture out of it and everything like that, and that you use the correct oil and whatever. But even the old R12 systems, the oil that they used for those, they say it works really well at coating the inside of the hoses and becoming a kind of a barrier layer for the 134. The 134 refrigerant, the way I understand it, was thinner in that it could possibly evaporate or go through the rubber hoses. If I remember right, this is years ago. I remember talking to people about it in other shops and stuff. So take a look at some of those kits that are available. Like I said, any local auto parts store usually has a 134 conversion kit on the shelf, and just kind of read through it and the instructions and stuff, or even maybe do some searches online to see if anybody else has converted and how they did it. But thanks for the question. Talk about the intake and heads being a bottleneck. Would the 301T benefit from an electric water pump and, if possible, an electric fan? Anytime you had, I mean, electric, or it's not electric, but your engine-driven fan and your water pump, I mean, there's going to be a parasitic draw there. There's going to be a loss there from those. So it's up to you if you think it's worth the cost to convert to electric water pump, electric fans. There's definitely horsepower, a little bit of horsepower to be gained doing that. The water pump, I mean, the water pumps can usually be pretty costly. The nice part about it, though, is with an electric water pump and electric fans, you could cool that engine down pretty quickly when it's not running. If you just had key on or whatever, that it was just running the pump and running the fan at the same time, you could cool it down very quickly. It's up to you. You know, for me, I don't really mess with it because I don't think the amount of gains that are there are worth the cost, but that's just me. I like to keep things simple and, you know, just roll with it that way. The more challenging part is, depending on the electric water pump that you go with, there's a couple different ones. There's ones that have the motor mounted on the front of the pump itself, and that's what's turning the impeller. But you have to think about it. If you're running power steering, that's running off of the water pump pulley. So you'd have to figure something out there. The other ones are like a cogged gear that bolts on instead of the pulley, and that is driven off of an electric motor that's mounted separately. But I don't know if you'd really want to use that style system. That's kind of old school. But electric fans is something I've always wanted to play with. The challenge with electric fans, and I'm sure other people have solved this problem, I just haven't really looked into it very hard. The Firebird uses a big giant fan shroud to hold the radiator in. It's not like a Chevy Camaro. So it becomes a little more of a challenge to find electric fans that fit inside the shroud. You almost have to keep the shroud so that you can mount the radiator, but then use electric fans mounted inside there. I have heard that LS1 fans from a 4th gen Firebird actually kind of bolt into, or there's a way to modify the fan shroud to actually fit them in there. Something I haven't tried yet, but hopefully in the future I might kind of test fit that with a fan shroud and see how that works out. But thanks for the question. Correct. Let's see. Did I miss one here? Oh, smog pump delete parts procedure, 79-400 water pump pulley and alternator belt are okay. Yep, that'll start it. So with the air pump on these cars, I know a lot of people like to delete the air pump. The biggest challenge is the fact that you need a 2-groove water pump pulley, because the air pump is actually driving the belt for the alternator, and they ran a single groove water pump pulley for the power steering. So if you find a 2-groove water pump pulley, and it has to be a 2-groove pulley for, I think, like 70 and newer Pontiac engines, any Pontiac V8, and it has to have air conditioning. Air conditioning ran about a 6.5-inch diameter pulley. So there's some pulleys out there that, for the water pump, that are non-AC pulleys, and they're huge. So you don't want to use that one. That slows down the water pump. But if you do the 2-groove pulley, and I've found them here and there, swap meets and even eBay and stuff, you can buy them new also, but they're kind of pricey. There's even billet ones available. But 2-groove water pump pulley, run the alternator belt for a 79. You could even do a 79-301 if you wanted to, non-turbo 301, or 79-400. Use that alternator belt. Then, like we talked about just earlier, the air pump passage, the tube in front between the 2 cylinder heads. So that's what needs to get blocked off. The driver's side cylinder head, the tube bolts right into the cylinder head, and there's an adapter in the cylinder head, like a reducer bushing for that pipe to fit. You got to knock that out of there, and usually you mangle the heck out of it with a hammer and a chisel or screwdriver or something. Once you get that side out, the passenger side, the tube it's O-ring fit into an aluminum plate, and the aluminum plate is on the front of the cylinder head. It's also a spacer for the air conditioning bracket. So you have to take that plate off and plug the air pump hole in that cylinder head and put the plate back on. Then you can leave the tube off completely. Then you can eliminate the bracket and the air pump itself, put your other belt on it, and you're good to go. Everything's good to go. If you really want to make it look like the air pump was never there, you can take the plate on the passenger side head. You can cut off the little ear coming up for mounting the air pump. So you can cut that down, sand that down, and then on the alternator bracket, the big main alternator bracket on the front, it has a little triangular ear coming off to catch the other side of the air pump. If you cut that at the arc to follow the arc of the adjustment and grind that part of it down, you'd never know that it had an air pump on it. But it's a little more involved. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as some of the Chevrolets out there where it's just, oh, take the belt off or just take the belt off, take the air pump off and plug off the tubes. I mean, you can't really, it's not that simple, but once you do all that, it works out great. Let's see, I can't find the 79301 pulleys. I'm assuming you're talking about the water pump pulley. It's pretty much the same as any of the other Pontiac V8 air conditioning water pump pulleys. I don't recall the number offhand, but like I said, anything 70 to 79 for sure would work as long as it had AC and it's a 6.5-inch diameter pulley. It can't be from any other engine. You can't get one off a Chevrolet. You can't get one off an Oldsmobile or a Buick or anything like that. It's not the same. So make sure that it is for sure off of a Pontiac. J. Mason, is the Stage 5 turbo exhaust housing ported and polished, and does G-Pop Shop do the machining work? It is not ported and polished. It can be ported and polished. I just found that information out not too long ago. Yes, G-Pop is doing the machine work for me. I'm actually going to be sending them my turbo maybe over the winter to have it ported and polished. They said that that will actually help with any turbo lag. It'll get it to spool up quicker. So yes, that can be done. Eric, can I eliminate most of those annoying vacuum hoses if I switch to your fuel injection system? Yeah, a lot of those vacuum hoses go away. With the fuel injection system and running the ignition timing control with it, there's really, I mean, the power enrichment valve goes away if you're a 1980. That's gone. If you do, I'm trying to think what else. The only thing you really need vacuum for once you go fuel injection is you need it for the heater ducts going to the firewall. So you got the one line there. Obviously, you got your power brakes. You got your PCV valve. Cruise control would require some kind of form of vacuuming if you're going to keep the cruise control. But then you also have to kind of mock up or fabricate some additional linkage to hook up your cruise control. I have done it on a Phytech. What else? What else would you need vacuum for? Trying to think. We said the PCV valve and stuff. The only other vacuum source that you have to supply a vacuum source to the throttle body unit itself, basically off of the intake manifold, because you need to boost reference the throttle body. The throttle body needs to see that what the engine vacuum and boost is in order to properly fuel it and to get the timing control where you need it. Let's see, we got Google Nutzer. I've used the 481040 XT pulley. Yes, that is the part number. If you see that part number pulley, that one will work. The XT sounds, I've purchased that one several times. William, and the advantages of removing the air pump. Most of the time it's aesthetically pleasing. It looks so much nicer because you open the hood, the first thing you're staring at is this giant pulley and air pump. That's mainly the reason. And then, of course, you got the potential exhaust leaks at the front of the cylinder head. But mainly, it's just to make things look prettier. I don't think you're really gaining all that much horsepower by eliminating it. I take it off because it makes it easier to work on. It looks nicer. Just one less thing, to quote Forrest Gump. No, it wasn't Forrest Gump. Who said that? Was it? Oh, yeah, one less thing. It was Forrest Gump. I'm like, which Tom Hanks movie was that? Jay Mason, just recently visited your website and saw that you'll be offering the custom ground cam. Can you talk to us about that? And is it only if you have the upgraded turbo? You just asked $1 million question, Jay. We're gonna go the next 25 minutes talking about camshafts. But, so the custom ground cam. If anybody wants to buy one, I have one. The custom ground cam that I bought for my customer's engine is a reverse split cam. It has more intake duration and lift than it does exhaust. The split is not a very large split. Excuse me, let's see, make sure I'm not missing something on my text messages. Oh no. The reverse split, it was something I wanted to try. It seems like I've kind of read other people with boosted Pontiacs that the reverse split works for them. More research that I do with it, the reverse split comes into effect depending on how much back pressure you have before the turbo, how much pressure is in the exhaust manifolds and stuff. So it seems like the higher that is, maybe the reverse split kind of helps it out. You know, of course, you got to look into your overlap and things like that too. We were going to use that in the customer's engine. He decided to go roller cam. So I now have this custom ground reverse split camshaft available if somebody wants to buy it. Maybe someday I'll try it in my car, but I'm starting to lean towards wanting to do a roller cam on my car also. Do you need the bigger turbo? No, you don't need the bigger turbo. I think they'll complement each other quite nicely. Honestly, a stock cam with the bigger turbo works pretty well. So I'm curious to know what the reverse split does. I wish I had more time. I wish I had a whole day on the dyno to just sit there and swap cams out all day and see what actually makes more power. But it's not required. It's not required. Honestly, if I had to choose between upgrading the cam or upgrading the turbo, one or the other, turbo, hands down. Keep the stock cam, turbo. That you'll gain more power just putting a bigger turbo on it. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. Airboss 99. I think I said that right. You said previously Edelbrock aluminum heads could be a way to increase horsepower, but what is the issue with fitment, the deck height in relation to the intake or the shared intake runner? Yes. So when you're going with Edelbrock cylinder heads, you're dealing with conventional Pontiac intake ports, which is an individual port per cylinder. Obviously, we have the 301 has its Siamese intake ports, so you can't use the 301 intake manifold with Edelbrock heads. So now, because you're trying to put conventional style intake port heads on a short deck 301 block, the intake manifold on a 301 is roughly 1.5 inches narrower than a standard Pontiac. Now, the bolt pattern is the same as far as where it bolts to the cylinder head. That's all the same as conventional Pontiac. In fact, the cylinder heads themselves, the bolt pattern is the same as conventional Pontiac. It's just that when you physically bolt them on, and there's other differences when it comes to like coolant passages and stuff. If you were to physically bolt the Edelbrock head or a set of number 17 heads or something onto a 301 block, the intake manifold has to be 1.5 inches narrower. I've done a couple prototype custom cut and welded intake manifolds that I've sold to people, and they're going to be testing them very, very soon and see how they work. One was a 4-barrel intake. The other one was a conventional style draw through turbo intake. It looked like a 301 intake, but it was for conventional cylinder heads. That's one of the issues, is making an intake. The other issue is the coolant passages. They are completely different on a 301 versus a 400. I haven't gotten a chance to verify what kind of head gaskets will work with the Edelbrock head. It seems other people have tried it and said that the combustion chamber ring, the cylinder circle of the 301 Felpro head gasket, is too small for the combustion chamber of the Edelbrock head or any other conventional cast iron Pontiac 400 head or whatever you want to call it. That the bore is too small. It's not gonna seal because the combustion chamber is so much larger. It's still something I want to lay out and see how bad it actually is, what it's actually doing. You get into issues with the 400 style head gasket. It has some oil drain back holes. I call them teardrop holes in the corners of the gasket that actually get really, really close to the coolant jacket of the 301 block. Some people have made it work, and it's a little risky. To me, it's a little too risky. But that's what's going on with that. Hopefully that answered your question. Rob Evanson, how good is your welder? I like to take intake manifold, cut out the bottom, and add about an inch or more air intake. I'm assuming you're talking about cast iron intake manifold. If that's true, and you're talking about the 301 intake, I see where you're going with that, and I agree. There is like barely an inch of depth for where the flange sits for the turbo, and then where the floor of the intake manifold is. I mean, it is a very, very short. What's that?
He said yes.
Oh, he said yes. Yeah, I could see where I think there's potential to get a little more. Anytime you could add more volume to that intake manifold, more plenum volume, I guess you want to call it, I think there'd be benefits to it. On the other side of it, I don't know how well you would, how those if you could take advantage of all the benefits of it, because the intake ports are still very tiny. So we could have a good sizable area, plenum area of manifold, but then we're trying to feed it through a little tiny straw into the cylinder head. So, I'm not a fan of what that intake manifold looks like. It's amazing it makes any power at all. But yeah, there's probably some room for improvement on there if we can get away with it. Dutchy Holland, stock cam and stage 5 turbo. Yeah, put some 165 rocker arms on it too. Get a little more lift out of that stock cam. That would be a good combo. That like I said before, you will gain power with a larger turbo, larger exhaust housing, or larger exhaust side of the turbo. Stage 5 works very well. I've proven it on the dyno that I've gained 40 more rear wheel horsepower with the stage 5 turbo at the same boost pressure. I could run a stock turbo at 14 pounds of boost and go, 210 horsepower to the rear wheels. I can put a stage 5 turbo on it, go 14 pounds of boost, and go 240 to the rear wheels, maybe even 250. Anybody? Oh, I think I answered everyone's question so far. We got 20 people on right now, so they're a little late to the game, but that's okay. Yes, we have 2. Well, you're not on right now? Oh, you are. Oh, that's 3, isn't it? Oh, she's not. Okay. No, you don't need to log on and make it 21. And yeah, Jonathan is over at a friend's house right now, and he thought he'd be on, but obviously he's got more important things going on with his friends. Oh yes, Eric, where is that extra 40 horsepower coming from? It's all magic. No. The extra 40 horsepower is coming from the reduction in back pressure in the exhaust system, not the exhaust system after the turbo, but actually the turbo exhaust back pressure that's there. So you have a lot of times in the boosted community, you will hear about what is the term for it? Pressure ratio. What is your pressure ratio? 2 to 1, 1.5 to 1, 1 to 1. Basically, what they're asking for is how much boost pressure are you making, and how much exhaust back pressure pre-turbo do you have? Now, a stock turbo on these cars, the exhaust side of the turbo is actually pretty small, and the reason they probably did that is because they get you into boost a lot quicker, so you get that power surge right away. But the problem is that with a small turbine housing like their turbine wheel, you end up having more back pressure in the exhaust. Well, when you have more back pressure, it pretty much kills the breathing capability of the engine. Once you do that, now it doesn't want to rev out. The power level is kind of capped and limited. So I've measured a stock turbo with a good exhaust system after the turbo, no catalytic converter, no mufflers, large downpipe, but the up pipe going to the turbo on a stock one was like at 14 pounds of boost, I buried a 30 PSI gauge in the exhaust side. So we were easily 2 to 1. I'm almost thinking it's 2.5 to 1 on the back pressure. Once I went to like the stage 5 turbo that I sell, that's got the larger exhaust wheel in it, and I measured it on my car. That, in fact, there's a video of it showing back at the dyno, was the YouTube video. You could see the back pressure gauge on the dashboard, and at 14 pounds of boost, it was only like 25 psi, I think, or it was even less than that. But dropping that back pressure, you will make more power, and you didn't change anything else. It's still at the same boost pressure. So there's definitely benefits to it. Yeah, there might be a little bit more lag with the turbo, but it comes on a lot stronger. I mean, it's a big difference. What else do we have? Eric, I knew it. Your headers with the stage 5 turbo and 165 rockers. The headers did make a difference on the engine dyno. They added torque. I question whether or not, I mean, it's up to you if you want to do something like that. I've got somebody waiting for a set of headers, and they've been on back order. The headers themselves, I have the piping for it, but the headers that I purchased for the kit are on back order. And you guys probably noticed that the performance industry is just way behind. There's so many shortages on parts and material and everything like that. I mean, some of this stuff is like pushed out till September, October before they're actually showing anything going back into stock. But honestly, I don't know if the headers are really required for it. I take, for instance, the blue and gold Macho turbo that I had, that I was doing a lot of work on. That had a stage 5 turbo, no headers. It did have 165 rockers on a stock cam. We did change the gear ratio to 323 gears, but it went 1480 at 96 miles an hour in a quarter mile at 14 pounds of boost. I think it made 247 horsepower to the rear wheels. It definitely made a big difference. It's pretty consistent how many times that I've been to the chassis dyno with customers' cars and even my car in testing. I was getting to the point where I could guess, just based on boost pressure and mods, what it was going to do for rear wheel horsepower. Stock turbo, 14 pounds of boost and a good exhaust system on it, you're just going to crack 200 horse to the rear wheels, somewhere between 205, 210, something like that. Even had a gentleman in Florida that backed that up with one of his dyno test sessions too. You upgrade to the turbo, and stage 5, almost every time you're going to get 240 horse to the rear wheels at 14 pounds. Depending on the tune, you might even squeak even more out of it, 240, 247, 250, and so on. So the headers, you don't have to. The manifolds will do it. I have manifold cars that did it. So it's up to you. I can make them. Would you let me borrow the design? We'll have to talk about that later, I guess. Yes, it also helps with better sound. It's amazing what the headers will sound like with a turbo. I never expected it to actually be that way, because I was under the impression that, well, the headers are in front of the turbo and the turbo is going to absorb all the noise. So it shouldn't make any difference, until we had an engine on the dyno and we did a back-to-back comparison between the manifolds and the headers, and holy cow, the headers were a lot louder. And even my boat anchor 81 out in the garage, when it's cold with the fuel injection and she's throwing a little more fuel at it and everything, and you first start it up, she's pretty aggressive sounding. It starts to rattle the windows a little bit in the house, and it's pretty loud. But once it warms up and calms down and the idle comes down, then it's not bad. Then it's fine. William, do you recall 8th mile times from any runs? Can you grab my time slips over there, please? I'll ask my lovely assistant to get me the time slips, and I will tell you what it did in the 8th mile. No. Thanks. Oh, let's see. When was this? Was this from last? Yeah, this was from Tuesday. 14.38 in a quarter mile, 99.72 miles per hour. 8th mile, it went 9.427. I went 942 in the 8th mile at 79 miles an hour. We race quarter mile here, so it's always hard for me to judge how fast a car is based on 8th mile. Oh, thank you, John. I don't know, William, is that fast for an 8th mile? I know the 60-foot times are terrible for this car because I can't get into boost right away. So my 60-foot time on that pass, that 942 pass, 60-foot was 2.33. It was absolutely pathetic. But we'll see. Like I said, a higher stall torque converter would probably cut that down dramatically. And I think there's a lot. I mean, 100 mile, almost 99.7 miles an hour in a quarter mile, 100 miles an hour. I mean, that car should be in the 13s already. And it probably will be. And it's all on the it's all on the straight off the line is where all the performance is at to get that 13-second time slip. So everybody's looking at me from the. Is there anybody from Yancey County, North Carolina that's on? Oh, William, we went 990. And this was this with your turbo car? What were the details of what you were, what kind of car it was, or what you were running? If you had any mods to it. Eric, what torque converter are you thinking of? Will you be offering one? That's a good question, Eric. Actually, I am thinking of offering a line of torque converters for these cars, both for the Turbo 350 and the non-lockup version for 1980 and the lockup version for 81. Also 204R lockup torque converters. I'm thinking of going pretty aggressive because it's my car. I want to get them. I like to drag race my car. I'm thinking of going with a 2,500 RPM stall. Past customers' cars that we've done 204R conversions, I've done a 2,400 stall, and it gets a little annoying on the street, from every stop sign where it's like it feels like you're riding the clutch of a stick shift car. It all depends on your personal preference. If you're more concerned about performance versus drivability, then a 2,500 stall, depending on the turbo, also would probably be a good upgrade. If you're more concerned about cruising and really don't want to have to deal with the high stall speed, then I would settle for a 2,200 stall, maybe even a 2,200 if you got more of a stock turbo. But any of the converters, a higher stall converter would definitely help, even if you have a stock turbo. Any other questions, William? William says, "Yep." I'm assuming that was to my question about if it was a turbo car, if it was the 301 turbo. My wife is pointing at her watch, going, "You're almost at an hour." I know. I'll keep answering questions as long as, because I know we got off to a late start. Would porting and polishing the heads and intake make a significant difference in horsepower? I believe it would. Porting the heads does make an improvement. I don't go crazy porting the heads. I've done a little bit of testing. I had a cylinder head flow bench tested this year, and we took a stock head with a 1.72 intake valve, and I did a little bit of cleanup on it and whatever, and we flowed that. Then we had the same head. We put a 194 intake valve in it and just opened up the seat and everything, but did not hog out the intake port or the bowl or anything like that. And there was some improvement on it from doing that. But then I had the guy that was running the flow bench. I said, bolt the intake manifold on it and see if that still holds true. And this was on the small intake port, because I wanted worst case scenario. He bolted the intake manifold on and it kind of all went away. It kind of reverted back. The larger valve, it kind of reverted back to the stock valve's flow numbers. So then it becomes a question of, well, you need to open up the intake manifold, the runners of the intake manifold. Well, there's not a whole lot of material there. Maybe you can, and if you can get tooling in there to actually do it. I don't know how much material you could remove to get it to go there. The guy that was running the flow bench, it was Pete's Porting here in Wisconsin. I think he's in Delavan. He was saying they have like the intake manifold extrude hone machine. Basically, that's where they put an abrasive putty through the intake manifold and just remove material that way. But man, that was expensive. I think I was getting quotes of like mid $500, $600 range to do that to the intake manifold. And then again, the question is, how much material is there to remove? If it's really thin in the casting, there's only so much, only so far that you can go, and who knows if it's actually going to help you out or not. So there's that. I mean, you don't want to be breaking through with it. My phone keeps going off. So yeah, there's definitely gains to be had there. It's just how much material can we remove? How far can we go with it? Jay, what do you think rear wheel horsepower wise would a turbo car make with the Stage 5 turbo? Cam and rockers, water injection, ported heads on E85. Well, I can tell you what all that will do minus the E85. It'll go about 250 horse so far is what I've gotten out of mine. Like I said, my tune might not be, I might have my tune over rich because I'm trying to play it safe and keep away from detonation and everything. So I might be leaving a little bit of power on the table with too much fuel or not enough timing. And, I'm trying to reduce the timing a lot, also to keep away the detonation. But that's usually that's about what I would get out of it. E85 might take that even a little bit higher. I want to try E85 soon with my car, but right now I've just been trying to see how far I can go with the E80 or with the 93 octane and just pump gas and see where that goes. But that's about what I would say. My car has the 252H comp cam in it right now with 1.65 ratio rocker arms with the Stage 5 turbo. I have headers on mine. I did a little bit of porting to the cylinder heads, just cleanup work, nothing major. It does have water injection on it coming on around 10 PSI. So I just don't have the E85 right now, which on average sometimes could add upwards of 20% on the horsepower side going E85. I do know that if you go E85, water injection is not needed. It cools the intake temp so much that you can turn off the water injection. Daryl, would love to see a 4-speed setup with all your modifications. Yeah, that'd be pretty interesting. I have sold some flywheels to some customers to convert a turbo car to 4-speed, but then I've never seen one in person. I've never heard from anybody that has one converted to a 4-speed to tell me what it was like driving it. Some people think that between shifts you're going to lose boost and then have to wait for the boost to come back after a gear change. But maybe. But at the same time, it's fun rowing gears. So this flywheel special, by the way, for the 301, because of the balance of the 301. They only made a factory 4-speed flywheel 1 year, and that was 1979. So there are 79 Firebirds, Trans Ams, Grand Prix, Grand Ams, Le Mans with 301s in them that had a 4-speed. But I make a flywheel that can be balanced to your original flex plate to run a manual transmission. Everything else is the same. Bell housing, clutch fork. You can use the Super T10 4-speed from a 400, all that stuff. Oh, you're looking to do that. John Smith is looking to do a 4-speed someday. Oh, you're okay. 204R. You're looking to do an automatic overdrive 4-speed. Gotcha. I was assuming Daryl was talking about 4-speed manual transmission. Oh, hopefully that's what he meant. Oh, 5-speed for Eric. That I wonder which 5-speed would you try to use? Probably a TKO, I'm assuming. There's been, when it comes to 5-speeds, like factory style 5-speeds, you're talking like T5 Borg Warners and stuff. Not sure if that would actually hold the power. And not that our cars make a ton of power, but that's always the question is, can it handle the torque and everything? But then the other question is fitment, trying to get it to actually fit inside the car. I'll only worry a short power band. Really need to get it to pull up to 5,000 RPM. Eric, it's funny you mentioned that. My car goes to 5. My car will pull to $5,000. Even at the drag strip, it did not nose over 4,500. I'm assuming that is maybe a little bit of the camshaft, and probably with the larger turbo is why it was doing that. But I've driven stock turbo cars that 4,500, they're all done. And then my car will actually go to 5 pretty easily. I don't want to stretch it past that though. Old Doug Nash. Yeah, Doug Nash there was some other, didn't Doug Nash have a 5-speed that 5th gear was 1-to-1 ratio, but 1st gear was very, very low so that you could run like a 2-something rear end ratio and kind of run it in reverse that way. Thought that was always interesting. You mentioned the back pressure is an issue. How do you eliminate or reduce it to produce more power? The upgraded turbo, that's where it's at. Larger turbine wheel is what we're doing to get that pressure ratio down. That's the main way. You can, if you have a stock turbo, upgraded exhaust helps. The bigger downpipe, the removing the catalytic converter, removing the mufflers, those help that issue also. Not as much as actually upgrading the turbo itself, because the turbo is the cork in the system. You have exhaust coming, out of the engine, and then it just gets all stopped up in the turbo. Marcus? Oh. He's a 308. Is he watching?
I think so.
He's commenting about, so hi Mark. He's commenting about the Doug Nash with the 1-to-1, I'm assuming the 1-to-1 ratio gear. And he's saying, yes, use 308 rear gears. I already have 308 rear gears from the factory in the turbo car. So just add the transmission, I guess. You don't have to change the rear gear.
He says Richmond.
Oh, Richmond. Yes. Okay. It was, yes. I know what he's talking about now. Doug Nash 5-speed was direct 4th, or he says direct 5th. That was Eric was saying direct 5th. Yeah. There wasn't somebody else coming out with a 5-speed transmission. Maybe it was the Doug Nash one that I was looking at. At one point, I was looking at some of that stuff from that was on like Summit Racing or whatever. I don't know if I'd ever go manual transmission on it though. But wow, 26 people on. I'm glad everybody was able to find me on this other live stream, having to redo it. But if there's no other questions, it's already been an hour. We could end it here. Yes, it does go by fast. Where do we get those TTA Performance shirts? Just send me an email. This one here is not available. This is old school. Actually, I'll for the end of the YouTube live stream here, we're gonna bring on one of my customers that's here from North Carolina. We have Sheriff Gary Banks. He is a Yancey County, North Carolina sheriff. Say hi, Gary. Gary has the other TTA Performance T-shirt. It's you could show him the backside too. It has TTA Performance logo on the back. Yep, thank you, Gary. But oh, okay. He's like, he's good. He's just modeling the shirt. Okay, not a problem. But that's the T-shirt that we offer with our logo. I don't do this one. This is the actual hood bird, and I don't want to get in trouble with GM stating that that's a, what do they call it, cease and desist, because you're using a registered trademark or whatever. So we have our logo t-shirts available. We have them for the ladies also, and tank tops. And I know you don't have yours on. Wife's not wearing hers right now. Come to the TA Nationals at the end of August in Dayton, Ohio. And my wife will be modeling one of the TTA t-shirts. What are your future plans beyond what you've discussed for TTA? Good question. I feel like I'm being interviewed, or having a review done when I used to work in the office, and they'd be like, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Future plans. Good question. Man, TTA Performance. I mean, we're trying to be more diverse. Also, we've been getting into on a local level more classic car stuff, just classic car repair, installation of performance parts. We've had recently we had a 68 Javelin that came in for like a tune-up and wanted a Pertronix electronic ignition installed, fix an exhaust leak, things like that. We had a 69 AMX come in for adding an oil pressure gauge to it and kind of checking things over for an oil leak. So I've been trying to be more diverse on that side of it, even other classic Pontiac stuff. And then we have the whole fuel injection thing. So the Holly stuff, I like tuning the Holly stuff, the snipers, things like that. I'd really like to do stuff with LS motor tuning with Holly, like a Terminator or something to that effect. And nobody's come to me with any of that yet. I've done the stuff with the Phytech and done a lot of tuning with those. I have HP tuners, been doing some stuff with HP tuners on the LS motors. I did try doing a Ford with it, which it doesn't work very well. But I'd like to learn more about the HP tuner stuff and get more involved with that. But again, that's where I'm trying to take things for TTA Performance. But on the 301 side of things, I'd like to really try, going anywhere from something simple as doing a blow-through 301 turbo with just a 301 4-barrel intake manifold and keeping the 301 heads, and do an intercooler blow-through setup. One of these days, I'd probably do that on my car. I got a feeling the 4-barrel intake manifold might flow better than the turbo intake. But I'd like to try that. I'd like to try maybe go as extreme as Edelbrock heads. There's so many. I mean, even looking at a 400 Pontiac 400 turbo, we actually did acquire. I think I talked about it in one of the other lives. We acquired a 400, a 75 400, but it's not a 557 block. It's the stronger block. That I'm looking to try a very cheap turbo system on it. Working with Mark at Loon Performance in Oak Creek, figuring out, try it with stock manifolds, try it with Mark's looking at fabricating an exhaust manifold for a turbo. Let's try that. Try headers, or my header system could probably be adapted to a 400 pretty easily. Try all this different stuff, but not spend a fortune on it. We'll keep the 6x8 heads that are on it for the 8-to-1 compression or whatever it makes. And I don't care if it's got the cast pistons in it. I'll stab in a Summit Racing cam just to keep it dirt cheap for the moment. And we'll throw, some kind of, eBay turbo on it or something like that with an intercooler and blow through a Holly Sniper on a Torquer 2 intake manifold I got laying around. And let's see how much horsepower it makes. That's the kind of stuff that I want to do for the business. I like staying with the forced induction stuff. I like doing the turbo stuff. Tried to talk a friend into doing a twin turbo on his AMC 401. But that's where I'm kind of going with the business. Where I'd like to try to go with the business. That's a good question. Thank you. Brooke Pitt. Hey, I was wondering where you were, Brooke. You never miss one of these. The God Boost is my favorite t-shirt. Yeah, I almost put that one on today for actually, assistant, can you go get the t-shirt? We'll show you the other t-shirt that's available too. We'll answer some other questions. Does the new downpipe that you sell make a big difference in sound under the hood where it sounds like a hairdryer? Yeah, it does a little bit. Mostly it's the turbo that's quieting that up, but having the big downpipe and taking off the catalytic converter, taking off the mufflers, you start to get that sound. Now, my car with the Stage 5 turbo, and everything, that thing sounds like a jet engine. It's actually pretty wild. I find myself going under, under bridges and stuff and kind of just laying into the throttle just to hear it spool up. But yeah, you might get a little more sound out of it with the exhaust and downpipe. Oh, here's the shirt. Here's the the Got Boost shirt with the hood lights on it. It's kind of hard to see. This is available in white or black because some of the pace car guys wanted it in white. But that one's kind of popular also. Let's see, what else do we have? We answered Brian's question. I'm looking hard into a TTA, so I appreciate all the info. Almost like the TTA because of the challenge with the 301T. Well, that's good. That's a good attitude to have towards it. There's some people out there that are all about horsepower and making as much horsepower as they possibly can. I've had people call me up and say, well, I want to make 500 horsepower and I want to beat those LS guys with my 301 turbo. Yeah, you're probably not going to get there. But it's still a lot of fun. I mean, they're fun to play with. Some people think it's like some kind of glass box type engine that they're so cautious about. They think they're going to grenade it. They think they're going to blow it up. I beat on mine like a rented mule. I mean, all the hot lapping and stuff that I was doing at the drag strip on Tuesday, not a problem. It just kept going. And there's really nothing. I mean, it's a stock 40,000 mile standard bore cast piston, 7.5 to 1 compression for 301 turbo. Just got a bunch of bolt-ons on it. I've told the other customer with the Daytona 500 car that we went to the dyno. He's like, well, I'm glad it's in one piece and that we didn't blow it up or anything. I'm like, I never thought that it would blow up. I was like, where people get into trouble is when they're taking things beyond the limit. If you're over revving it, if you're, the tune's not right, it's detonating, whatever, and you're still beating on it, yeah, you're going to break something. I've done it. I've detonated and popped the head gasket, just being stupid. But the thing is like, you can totally tell if the motor's happy. His car on the dyno, it didn't skip a beat. It was smooth on power, and it just laid it down. And it's like, you can tell it was happy. It's not going to break if it's happy. Yeah. So that's a big part of it. Have you been able to test and tune my 81 TTA with the Holly Sniper fuel injection? Bruce Johnson. No, it's still at the body shop, Bruce. The body shop got a little backed up on some stuff, and they still have it for repairing the door hinge pins, and replacing the bushings. Your car is just one of those cars that, when everything, sometimes you get a car that's just a ringer that it just all comes together perfectly. Your car is that car. It runs nice. It fires up every time. It idles great. It's so smooth. When it's idling, it's smooth on power. My car doesn't even run that good with the Holly Sniper on it. So I don't know how much. I mean, yeah, I'm definitely going to be, tuning it and dialing things in better, but it's not too far off right now. John Smith wants to get one of each of the t-shirts when he places his order, so we'll be shipping that to Australia. Eric, no Tahoe blue shirts available? I could probably get one made in blue if you wanted. I wonder if I can get the logo in blue. I probably could. Oh yeah, Gary Banks will want one. Well, Gary Banks' car is not Tahoe blue; it's a darker blue. Yeah. Oh, it used to be a Tahoe blue car. Okay. Brian D, I bought my 81 with only 45,000 miles in mint condition. I'm thinking of buying your exhaust system with no cats. How is the sound compared to a stock setup? The sound is amazing. A stock setup is very quiet. A stock setup, stock downpipe, especially with the factory pellet type catalytic converter and the stock mufflers on it, you can't really hear them. You take everything off, it sounds like a muscle car. It's got a nice throaty sound to it. It sounds really good. It's not annoyingly loud. It's not like, oh my God, I can't talk in the car at highway speeds. I mean, my wife even said it sounds nice. I've heard big block Chevelles with 2-chamber Flowmasters that were way louder than these cars with no cat and no mufflers. So, yes. And as John Smith is saying, go to the Rocky videos on YouTube. for the TTA Performance, I show my exhaust system being installed, and then I start the car up. There's also an 80 pace car video that shows it with the same exhaust system, and you get to hear what that sounds like. A stock turbo will take the sound down quite a bit, and it just gives it a nice little throaty rumble, mainly at idle, a little bit off idle. Getting into the turbo and getting into boost, it's really not loud. It doesn't get any louder. It actually kind of quiets up a little bit because of the rush of air out of the turbo. Now you start doing like me and you go with a bigger, stage 5 turbo, things get a little more aggressive because of a bigger turbine wheel. And then you start doing headers and stuff, and then it starts to make its presence known in the exhaust note. Could you sell your tune for the Holley Sniper as a good base map to work off of? Actually, it comes standard in the kit that I offer for the 301 Turbo. So Jay, if you don't already know, I offer a Holley Sniper kit for the 301 Turbo. So it is a specially modified Holley Sniper to work with the draw-through turbo design. It has a tune already put in it, from me. It comes with all the fuel lines, braided fuel lines and fittings to work with the stock 301 turbo steel fuel line that's on the car. Everything's pre-cut, fittings are all worked out. You get the bracket for the throttle cable, the things that are required, and you can send it to me to be machined. The plenum that bolts to the turbo, it needs some machining so that the Sniper will fit on there and the throttle blades will clear everything. Most people will, because you had a spread bore quadrajet carburetor originally, and then you go to a square bore 4150 style Holley flange, most people are like, oh, you just buy that adapter that goes from square bore to spread bore. Yeah, but then you add another inch or so to the height of the throttle body, and now you're hitting the hood. The stock air cleaner won't fit. Everything starts to interfere with the hood. By doing having me machine, or if you want to machine it, the plenum, now that the throttle body will bolt directly to the plenum, no adapter needed, and you can run the stock air cleaner. You're not going to interfere with the hood. My kit also includes the fuel pump and sending unit to put the pump in the tank. It's a single feed system, so there's no return line needed. It has a regulator in the tank. So everything is just about bolted in, plug and play, designed for the 301 turbo. But yes, if you did buy everything separately and you wanted help with the tuning or to get a tune file from me, just contact me and we can work something out. I think that was all the questions, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll end it there. We're starting to lose some of the viewers, but hour and 18 minutes. So thanks everyone for joining another YouTube Live. Think of some questions and things that you might want to see in the next YouTube Live. Maybe we can get the new webcam working better and the sound working better, so that we can maybe do one from out in the garage this time and next time. But enjoy the summer, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.